Bud Selig said something yesterday, and you just can't say this as a commissioner, especially when you're the commissioner of a sport like baseball, which is all about numbers and history. And he just threw it out there. And, I just laughed when I heard it. I thought, Bud, you can't just throw this out there. He said because of Alex Rodriguez and his admission that he's not ruling out adjusting baseball's record book. Oh, watch out. Every stat nerd in the world, this is an internet Armageddon. You can't just throw out, it's not like changing the siding on your house. I'm going to go with vinyl. I'm going to paint it. This is a sport that's entire tradition is based on data. It's not like football. Football fans don't sit around and go, remember Gale Sayers, 14,211 yards. But everybody knows how many home runs Hank Aaron hit. Fantasy baseball people. I mean, they know every number. The whip, the on-base percentage. So, Bud Selig throws that puppy out there. Poor Bill James. Guy's going to have a coronary. Can you imagine Bill James, the sabermetrics guy this morning? My entire existence is a fraud. And I just read that little quote, and I thought, oh my, you can't. Poor stat goober this morning. What does he mean adjusting? If he touches Caminiti's on-base percentage, I'm going to have my mom write a very strongly worded letter. Nerd alert! You know how many proms I turned down for baseball stats? Okay, none. I wasn't actually invited. But if I were... Bud, don't screw with record books. And I've always said this about Bud Selig. It's very hard to be baseball's commissioner. Much easier to be Roger Goodell. Keep evolving, line them up, let them play, keep away gambling controversies. People love the sport. He doesn't have to deal with purists. No such thing as a football purists. NBA purists. Baseball's got purists, and they drive the sport. And they're like Dustin Hoffman and Rain Man. Don't move a Cheeto. Don't turn the channel. Don't move a toothpick. They go crazy. They go nuts. And poor George Will probably had to cancel his dinner with Morty Zuckerman tonight. He's probably staying in. Tony La Russa probably couldn't sleep all night. You can't just adjust the record book in baseball. You have to realize. And by the way, I grew up from 5 years old to 25. I was a baseball fan. My favorite player was George Brett and Pete Rose and Johnny Bench. And I collected their baseball cards. But when I looked at the back of George Brett's baseball card or Pete Rose's baseball card or Dave Winfield's baseball card, I never cared about the numbers. I always liked that little story in the corner. They'd have a little trivia question up by the banner. Dick Allen. Dick once woke up with a deer in his kitchen. That was always fascinating stuff to me. Art Shell is leaving the Raiders. Actually, it's called a firing. But coaches call it something else, escaping. It is irrelevant who coaches the Raiders. They are an absolute grease fire. Coaching the Raiders is essentially piloting a plane that's on fire before you ever get into the cockpit. It does not matter who coaches this franchise. Worst job in the NFL by a mile. You have a crazy person as an owner who still meddles and thinks he's the GM. You have the worst scouting department in the NFL. Bad stadium, bad roster, no momentum. Art Shell should have never been hired. He was out of the game for 10 years and was not very good the first time around. You have got to be a poorly run team to hire Art Shell as a coach. And never forget Art Shell's first big hire was an offensive coordinator. Straight from, I kid you not, a bed and breakfast. I'm being serious. This is not comedy. The Raiders' offensive coordinator, his previous gig, he owned a bed and breakfast. Now, the upside is the Raiders' pregame catering got a lot better. The offense got worse. But they had an Eggs Benedict sausage quiche before the Raiders' first game. It was the envy of the league. Before a couple of games, big prawns, mango, demi-glaze, outstanding. Tom Walsh, hired straight from a bed and breakfast. I was joking with the staff this morning. This Tom Walsh, the bed and breakfast guy, in my gut feeling, what the Raiders should have done, they should never have fired Tom Walsh, the bed and breakfast guy. I think what they should have done is kept him, hired a chef as the defensive coordinator, hired a waiter as the running backs coach, and just became a restaurant instead. Because they've clearly failed at football. They're a complete joke. They're a laughing stock of the NFL. So maybe it's time to go in another direction. Just be a restaurant. I mean, I'm not joking here. They are one step away from hiring a camera crew and becoming a reality TV show. They are one step away from doing that. We've had all the reality shows, The Bachelor and Road Rules and Surreal Life, and what was the Nick and Jessica show? What was that called? Newlyweds. Yes. We've had all these shows. The Raiders should literally have the Raiders should just hire a camera crew and make themselves a reality show with Al Davis, the owner. We could call it Al's House. That's what we'll call it. We'll call it Al's House.
Al's House on the south side of the bay. Al's House. The mystique has gone away. Al's House on the south side of the bay. Al's House. The silver and black has gone astray.
Yeah, it'd be on like one of those really good networks like Spike, Bravo, those great ones. They are just a joke. Earlier today, a caller called as we were talking about BCS scenarios. And he was one of these callers. And the worst callers are always this way. They're sure they're the best callers. And they think they deserve all the time they want. And the minute this guy came on, you can hear me start groaning. I just know it's going to end poorly. And this is essentially the 51 seconds, and I'll let you react to it. Say whatever you want to how some of you thought I was too mean, some of you did not. You can hear me groaning because I can tell immediately it's just a ridiculous premise. But anyway, roll the 51-second tape.
Yeah, hey Colin, how you doing?
Go ahead.
I got a scenario for you that I just want answered. If Purdue ran the table this year, I know they didn't, but if they did, they would get the bid from the Big Ten because they haven't gone to the Rose Bowl as recent as Michigan or Ohio State.
Yeah, I'm getting a headache.
If Boise State was in the top, just hang on. Just hang on.
No, by the way, I'm hosting a national show, and your premise is if Purdue went unbeaten.
I know. Just listen. Just answer the question.
Brent, when you host a national show and want to kill your ratings, I'll let you do it.
Ricola, ridiculous.
When your opening premise to a nationally syndicated radio host and you demand to be heard is, hey, if Purdue is unbeaten. Yeah, if they're unbeaten, there's how did he get through the screening process? If Halloween was in December and Christmas was in June, would Valentine's be in July? Shoot me in the groin. Derek Jeter, Yankee Stadium. I couldn't believe the footage of men crying at the ceremony last night. The only time I've been that emotional over a building was when they closed a Jack in the Box around the corner from my house a couple of years ago. I'm not going to lie to you. That hurt. Because I still haven't found a barbecued bacon sirloin burger even close. That's the only time I ever cried at moving, tearing down a building. So I'm watching ESPN yesterday, and it was like Super Bowl. 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. All Yankee Stadium. A 24-hour farewell to a stadium. People essentially honoring concrete. Grown men sobbing and recalling great days of yore. And the memories of the best concrete in sports. I'm not really sure why guys get worked up over facilities. Maybe women do the same thing when they close a Nordstrom's. I have no idea. I don't get it. I don't get sentimental attachment to mortar and bricks and concrete, but clearly I'm in the minority. So here is my sappy tribute to the Yankee Stadium that I know and that I love. It was a steamy August afternoon. 2 years ago, riding the subway with my daughter. I couldn't tell where I stopped, and the bum began. I considered buying Olivia both a pennant and a tetanus shot. We arrived in 94-degree weather, drenched and ready for our nation's pastime. Trying to ignore the stench of stale beer and Bronx urine, we made it to our seats. Or so we thought. Until a very humble yet vulgar stadium attendant let me know we were 2 rows off. From there, my thirst of the game was first quenched by a $9 Heineken. Warm and flat, but historic Heineken. I explained to my daughter the infield fly rule, the sacrifice bunt, and why two guys in front of us were being ejected. But the best part was saved for the 7th inning, when a mom behind us dropped an F-bomb after Giambi killed another rally. The Yanks lost, and my daughter Olivia, as we left, she clung to me like she'd never clung to me before. Mostly because she'd never been this frightened. That's the Yankee Stadium I know, and the Yankee Stadium I love. Thank you. That one's gonna sting. Fans often hold ESPN or any reporting company, basically people in their own job have all sorts of faults. But if ESPN ever makes a mistake, we get lambasted. Ed Werder bats about 900 at ESPN. He absolutely worked the Cowboys organization this past year. Cowboy fans hated Werder. Cowboy fans are delusional and myopic. And they grew up in Dallas, and the Cowboys are their favorite team, and they can't believe that bad Ed Werder. Hey, Cupcake. Hey, Cowboy. He batted about 900. About 900. That was better than Juan Gonzalez when he was on the juice. Ed Werder, with the Childress, Brett Favre situation, has come out and said, yeah, he knew he had surgery. This relationship with Favre and Childress and Viking management, it's a lot closer than Brad Childress is letting on. Brad Childress went on a local radio station, KFAN in Minneapolis, and said, I don't know what in the world he's talking about. Was there a deadline, coach? Absolutely not. Oh, really? So you were just willy-nilly on it? Yeah, Brett shows up great. Nah, we're not really paying attention. Bill Belichick would. That's why he wins Super Bowls. And you're Brad Childress. Doug, you better know Brett Favre. Sage Rosenfels is your quarterback. Sage Rosenfels is Andy Reid's quarterback. Tom Coughlin's, Jeff Fisher, Bill Belichick. They're getting hourly reports on Brett Favre. If you're not, that's why you're Brad Childress. This idea there was no deadline. I don't even know what they're talking about. And willy-nilly, we just show up and we don't even talk to Brett. And by the way, when they asked him about a later date, he got really vague. Well, we'll see what happens. It's a heck of a player. You know, I've seen those NFL films by Steve Sable. And no contact. Very happy with what we have. I mean, it's silly. Now, I'm not blaming Chapstick and Boondoggle in the mornings on KFAN. I don't know who they are. But Ed Werder bats 900. Makes 8 to 9 times what an NFL reporter does in your local city. It is a dream job to get a job here. He earned it, Brad, and his record's better than yours so far. He bats 900. You have another season. You don't get to the playoffs. You already look like an orthodontist. You'll be one. Do you really think that an NFL head coach going into a season with all that talent and Sage Rosenfels and Tavares Jackson isn't getting reports on Brett Favre, who was 13-3 with the Packers, left, they go into the tank, who was 8-3 with the Jets, got hurt, they go into the tank, to this day, walks on a field, teams get better, and he just, I don't have any idea. You know, if you don't, retire. I mean, be a coordinator. Go to college. And that's fine if Brad Childress wants to be vague. Knock yourself out. Bill Belichick's vague. That's not the point. But to deny you don't know anything going on with Favre. Surgery? He had surgery? I had no idea. You should have an idea. This is not high school football. The big old homecoming game Friday against Quinlan High. This is the NFL. You've got to know everything. I had no idea. I was just watching tapes of an old Orange Bowl last night. I haven't even looked at team tapes yet. Who's Brett Favre? I've never heard of him. Don't get conveniently dumb.